Joining me tonight to make sense of the emerging new economic order of the world is Mr. George C., a successful industrialist, financier, international trade practitioner, and negotiator for the Philippines vis-a-vis ASEAN, Japan, China, and USA. He's also the founding director of the think tank Integrated Development Studies Institute. Good evening, George. Welcome to Statecraft. Well, George, this is my first question for you. You are the founding director of the think tank Integrated Development Studies Institute, or IDSI. Can you tell us more of what IDSI does?
IDSI is called integrated dahil we have a wide field of experience both in business and in organizational politics, and we are able to, we think, integrate these branches of knowledge to allow better information and decisions for our people. Kaya ang ating focus are where domestic is concerned, since there are already a lot of people in analyzing politics. Primarily, we analyze business and economics. And then we also involve ourselves in historical research because there are maybe a dearth of writers in this field. And I think what we are known for is yung geopolitics also for international, because there's a lot of information that siguro hindi nararating, does not arrive in the Philippines, and that's why we are very appreciative of the role of SMNI and you, of course, Sasot, for disseminating, nagtatalakay kayo ng mga information na hindi naman napag-usapan ng mga ibang stasyon.
Pero George, what differentiates IDSI from other think tanks? Because there are other security-related think tanks out there that, they're often actually gracing other networks when it comes to discussion of foreign policy and geopolitics.
When we're talking about foreign policy, we believe that we have a track record. Not only we don't only claim to understand business and economics, we have a track record in dealing with this, both on the private level and international level. So our analysis is involving actual finance, actual trade transactions. So we have we take this into account, as well as cultural factors of what actually works between people rather than just theory. For instance, if I were having the philosophy from a Western economic perspective or political perspective or Asian, we are unable to take into account what can actually be achieved between peoples of a certain cultural or economic level. And so we are able to say, for instance, for the Philippines, in a country in our level of economic development, the agricultural products we have, our manufacturing capacity, how do we integrate into something like BRI or the international Western ecosystems of economics? So what is it that allows us to make decisions that are practical and usable for Pinoys, that has the greatest impact for the greater number, and not just for specific business or category?
So as I understand, George, IDSI integrates not just the political, but also historical and cultural, and of course, economic dimensions.
Yes. So for instance, a lot of people, maybe for instance, dream about bringing the Philippines back to being an industrial base. There are certain things that cannot happen here industrially because of our structure of energy costs and logistics. There are certain aspects of manufacturing we can do, and we know what industries we can bring back or not bring back. For instance, if they're going to say that we're going to try to do textiles again, it's not going to happen because of the cost of energy, the type of workers we have, the psychology of the people. For instance, we have operated in Taiwan, Hong Kong, China, the people produce 3 times as much as our people. They will work on weekdays, weekends, they will work overtime, and our people will not. So that's not going to, we are never going to be effective in that. As well as the logistics, transporting goods between one island and another, it's never going to happen. But everyone already recognizes the Filipino is exceptional, and since we are in the beauty business and we're also in the service business, in fast foods and services, we know that the Philippines are appreciated everywhere in the world for the way they treat other people and services. So, Sasot, even the Chinese people are telling us that they want Filipino workers in the services, in the hotels, in the hospitals. So if we are able to negotiate these, we don't really have to negotiate as hard on the goods in the areas where we can never be competing in. And so we can negotiate instead for certain other categories. For instance, when we were negotiating with Japan, they were asking for the entry of their cars, and we were not asking for anything. So IDSI, we were able to introduce that. Let us introduce that they accept nurses and these requirements. However, some of the negotiators, they negotiated for the quota of nurses, but the language requirements were extremely extensive, so that we have to speak even better Japanese than the Japanese, which would not happen. So there's really very few that are sent there. However, when the U.S. said that we cannot negotiate for more quota for nurses, we stopped negotiating, whereas India continued to negotiate. So they were able to export an additional 9,000 nurses, and we did not, because we stopped negotiating. We should not stop negotiating, no matter who tells us. For instance, in our quotas for garments, wearables, footwear, we were told that the U.S. said you can only negotiate multilaterally, but so the Filipinos stopped negotiating at that point in time, but Vietnam continued to negotiate and got several million more dozens of quota. So itong mga pagkaintindi ng how negotiation should be conducted and under what categories is a very big help for the country, and this is part of what IDSI wants to be able to contribute, that are not naturally understood by people who went through school or are from just one industry or another.
Yes, I think that's very important when we highlight cultural factors on whether something could work or not work. George, something that you've said caught my attention, and what we said is that based on our culture and structure of our society, it's not so easy to have a particular kind of industrialization. But can we still industrialize given, the conditions that
definitely there are levels of industrialization we can do. For instance, in our exports of minerals, Indonesia was able to add processes to their requirements, both processes in their requirements to the export of nickel, so that you don't just export the raw materials, and this is something we can do, and we've already started to do. There are also processing of fruits. And then there are also counter measures, like not really measures, but requirements. For instance, we can say that you want to import these items here, why don't you produce or package some of them here? So that is something that other countries have asked for, that we should study more closely and ask for the same things. Let's say, for instance, that in terms of the export of mango, dried mangoes or items, we found that many of our agricultural products, the Chinese, Vietnamese, Thai who come here actually repackage our products and sell it for more. Our own experience, for instance, also is that the Chinese and others have actually told us our packaging is too low in terms of quantity, because we're doing it almost sachet level, and our neighboring countries want bigger packages and more high quality packaging, which is not very difficult to do, and we can charge a better price. So we are maybe having to tailor some of our products to how the foreign markets act, and we should study it more than our people are currently doing. For instance, if the tourists come, we will note that if you go to Laguna or Batangas, the buko pie, if you look at the buko pie, until today they're still packaged in cardboard boxes. And so the prices continue to remain low. If we repackage it better, we're able to get much better prices. In garments, for instance, we find that if you put the right name or make something look like a brand, we can charge 2 to 3 times the price. So that means also the same with services. So we have to learn the different aspects of marketing, not just packaging, but also in terms of delivery convenience and booking convenience. We can charge much more in our neighbors. We don't have to always go to the lower end of the market.
George, you've already mentioning about what's going on externally in the Philippines, and I think everyone is aware that the world is changing right now, and multiple centers of powers are emerging. Economic power is shifting to the east, and as China continues to rise, we will expect more dramatic changes. And the question is, how should our country position itself in this restructuring of the world's economic and political order?
Subscribe for more videos and updates. Thanks for liking and sharing. Integrated Development Studies Institute supports productive, integrated, multidimensional views and insights that promote truth, peace, and development.